Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Joining me today is 𝗏𝗍𝗲 Venkat as we talk about why that Hezbollah or Hamas or Houthis are getting pounded and the Muslims in South Asia are taking it out on the poor Hindus. What is the connect? What did the Hindus have to do with any of this? To understand this and how Hindus need to protect themselves and also perhaps give it back, let's welcome 𝗏𝗍𝗲 Venkatji. Venkatji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. How are you, sir?
Namaskar, Sree Iyerji. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, sir. Sir, this seems like somebody's taking out their frustration, but you cannot allow this to happen. And somewhere you have to have some sort of a retribution. That's what I'm looking for from you more than anything else, because the Hindus are really, really at a loss. They think that they are paying their taxes. The law and order is supposed to take care of them. Only when it does not take care of them, what do they do? This is the question. I'm being a little radical in my approach today because
Right.
I'm getting tired of waiting for the law to take its own due course. So over to you. You can start anywhere you want from the contextual point of view, and this is going to get worse. Israel has determined that it is going to eradicate not just these three H's, but also the source that is funding them. This is going to bring a sea change in Middle East politics. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday politely told Trump to, there is a word that we use in US.
I know.
It starts with the letter F. I will leave it at that. So
Yeah.
over to you, sir. Thank you.
No, thanks a lot, Sree. I think that's a very important question you have raised. But I think what we should do is we should start with expressing a bit of condolence for Yahya Sinwar, Haniyeh, and other top leaders of Hamas who are the true Muslims. Okay, because Islam teaches that the highest duty of a Muslim is to wage jihad, okay, and then go and kill innocent people and take their women. And that was the mission the Hamas leaders were leading. Okay, they were following every teaching of the Quran, Islam, the Hadiths, everything to the T, right? And then they were hoping, Hani and Yahya Sinwar were hoping that they would land 72 virgins in heaven after committing all these atrocities against the Jews, against other innocent people, against gay people, lesbians, everyone. They threw off the rooftop. They were hoping for all of those things. The reward would be eternal heaven or Jannat, okay, Islamic heaven, and 72 virgins. That is a little bit of disappointing news to go with that, because the linguist Christoph Luxemburg, he did a very deep linguistic analysis of the Quran, and then he came up with a very path-breaking conclusion that much of the Quran is written in Syro-Aramaic, okay, Syrian Aramaic language, not in Arabic. At least there is an underlying substratum which is Syro-Aramaic, upon which a little bit of Arabic has been overlaid. Okay, so to give an example, a lot of the older scripts, especially the Arabic script, which only came into existence in the 5th or 6th century, did not have vowels. Okay, they could not represent vowels when they inscribed something. So you need other linguistic techniques to make sense of what some of the verses say, because many of the Quranic verses are unintelligible. So Christoph Luxemburg comes up with a very path-breaking finding, and he demonstrates that in his extraordinary book. He says the reference is not to 72 virgins, it is to 72 raisins, okay, dried grapes. So in other words, for all the things and all the sacrifices, quote within quote sacrifices, that Haniyeh, Yahya Sinwar and others made, they are going to land in the Islamic Jannat and only receive 72 shriveled raisins. They are not going to get virgins. So in a way, this is, I think, kind of a double whammy for them, because they did all these things in the hope of reaping eternal rewards in heaven in the Islamic Jannat, but they're going to get 72 shriveled raisins, which probably cost less than $1 in the US, right, where you and I live.
Right,
So,
right.
so I feel a little sorry for them, but I hope at least this time the rest of the Muslims wake up that it's not worth killing others and getting killed in return for earning 72 raisins, which you can get it at a throwaway price here in the US or anywhere in the world. Okay, little bit of condolence to those two criminals, those two terrorists who got killed, and I think others will soon follow suit. And the head of Hezbollah also got killed. So a lot of that is happening. And this is, I think the point you brought up is the most important one, right? So we Hindus tend to think that laws will protect us. But at the end of the day, it does not matter whether it's a democracy, whether it's a dictatorship, whether it's a republican system, regardless of whatever we have in the world, at the end of the day, laws can only protect you to some extent. But beyond that, it is society, right? It's society, the kind of ideologies that it has internalized that makes all the difference. And you and I are originally from Tamil Nadu, and then Tamil Nadu has a lot of laws, right? Like Indian constitution has a lot of laws, but most of them are toothless. And the Dravidian parties can carry out vicious anti-Brahmin, anti-Hindu propaganda for decades, now for over a century. And there is nothing a law can do to stop that because the people are receptive to that idea, right? So all this hate mongering and other things, people are receptive to that. I think it's the same thing that is happening in a lot of the Muslim countries, where the population is majority Muslim. They harbor intense hatred towards Jews, towards Kafirs. Okay, like we Hindus. We Hindus are the topmost Kafirs because we are polytheists. Okay, so polytheism is what Islam attempted to completely eradicate from the world. So Jews and Hindus are the number one enemies of Islam. And that's why regardless of what laws we enact and what other safeguards, legal safeguards we seek out, the truth is Muslims are not constrained by the laws and by the criminal retributions and other things, legal retributions. And they follow Islam, and Islam teaches them to hate non-Muslims, particularly Kafirs like Hindus and Jews. And this will continue to happen. And I think that's where I think your point about Israel is super critical because, sir, if you look at it, Israel's population is 9 million, right? Out of those, only 7 million are Jews, less than 7 million are Jews. And yet, and that is a population less than that of Chennai. Okay, Chennai has a population of 11 or 11.5 million people. Yet look at the number of technological advances that Israel has made. Israel has an iron dome, right? Like a week ago, Trump mentioned that America needs an iron dome, but we do not have it. Okay, so in some regards, Israel has even surpassed America in terms of defending itself and defending its borders and to strike back. Okay, and I think this is the most crucial difference because it's not the numbers that make the difference when it comes to safeguarding the Hindu Samaja or the Jewish community or anyone, but whether that community has the ability to invest its top brains into doing research, into making inventions, into creating defense apparatus and everything that can protect your population. I think that's what makes all the difference at the end of the day. And I think that's the point we Hindus should focus on from now on. Go ahead, sir. Back to you.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that we are seeing, sorry about that, I have to man the controls also. One of the things that we are also seeing now is that they basically plan and plot, raping and then murdering and then dismembering some of the girls that they are catching. This is happening more and more even in India also. Yeah. Now, these are all inhuman crimes. So I don't understand that connect. Okay, so I can even understand the fact, because we talked about this in our Tamil hangout. He, a 67-year-old man in Bangladesh, viewers, he suddenly takes a liking to his daughter-in-law. His son actually divorces her, and this man marries her. And if you go back and look at what happened in Prophet's life, something similar happened. So people are beginning to emulate things that were supposed to have happened at the time of Prophet's existence. But I don't understand this new thing about, 3 people planning the murder of an innocent girl, Hindu girl. Then they kill her, they take turns raping her. Sometimes the killing happens before the rape, sometimes the rape happens, the killing happens, rape happens again afterwards. And then afterwards they dismember this person. Is that just to kind of obliterate the proof, or is it beyond that? Is there any reference to that also? Because we need to understand, God damn it, what all the things these people can think of. Because when you come back with a retribution, doesn't matter which way you hit, you get back double. That's what I'm hoping for will happen. Over to you.
You raised 3 points, right? Point number 1, why do they go about attacking, raping, and butchering Hindus? And what is the motivation for that. Okay, so this is number one. Then the number two question, let me take one at a time, okay, so that I can go into the point. This directly follows Islamic teachings and prescriptions. Okay, so I think I might have mentioned this in one of the previous podcasts, but when ISIS, who are once again true Muslims, okay, so they follow Islam in its purest form, or they followed because Trump exterminated all of the ISIS. And when the ISIS attacked in 2014-15, when they attacked uh, Sinjar and other places where the Yazidi people lived. So Yazidis, for the benefit of the viewers, are a community, a non-Abrahamic community, one of those traditional religions of the Near East, Iraq, parts of Syria, etc. And they have been, they are one of the most ancient religions of that region of the world. And they were targeted by Muslims time and again. And that's the reason most of them fled to the Sinjar mountains over the centuries. And in 2014, 15, 16, ISIS repeatedly attacked them. What they would do is they would line up all the men who have pubic hair and shoot them dead. Okay. And this directly follows the example of Prophet Muhammad. When he attacked other communities, he will separate the men from boys by identifying who has pubic hair, and whoever had pubic hair, even if it's a 13-year-old boy, he will be killed. They will chop off his head. And that too, the chopping of the head, which in India, a lot of people will know as 𝗤𝙤𝙤𝙤 𝗤𝙤𝙤, okay, which is separating your neck, your head from your neck. Okay, again, directly follows the Quranic prescription where Allah says that He will enable the Muslims and make them powerful by separating the heads of non-believers from their necks. Okay, everything word by word, ISIS was following the example of Prophet Muhammad and the teachings of Islam when they did all those despicable, unspeakable crimes to Yazidi girls and Yazidi boys. That's the exact same thing that the Bangladeshi Muslims are doing to the Hindu women by slaughtering the Hindu men first, then gang raping Hindu women. Sometimes they'll rape, and then after the woman is dead, they will continue to rape that woman. Now, this is necrophilic rape. Necrophilia means doing something with a dead person, with a corpse. And necrophilic rape is raping the corpse. This too, once again, follows an example of Prophet Muhammad. So there is a hadith where Prophet Muhammad, his aunt has died, his maternal aunt has died, and she is being buried. And then Prophet Muhammad gets into the pit where she is laid, and then he lays with her. And you know what that phrase means. It means to have sex with the dead body of a woman who in this case happens to be his own aunt. This is what Prophet Muhammad did. And the hadiths are very proud of advertising this. And once again, when they are killing a woman, killing a Hindu woman and raping her, they are following the perfect example of Prophet Muhammad. So now comes the question, right? So why, we talked about a little bit about why they do all these despicable crimes. It has motivations directly in Islam, in the Quran, and in the context of Prophet Muhammad. And then why do they carry out necrophilic rape? Once again, the example of Prophet Muhammad. That's what these people are following. And then take another example. Why do they specifically target Hindu girls and women? And for this also, you have to go back to the ISIS example. When the ISIS rounded up the Yazidis, what they did was they separated all the Yazidi girls who were above the age of 8. Okay, and then they sold them into sex slavery and they raped them and all of these things. And you would have seen the news just a couple of weeks ago. One more Yazidi girl was rescued, and I think she was brought over to Germany. Okay,
Correct.
So, why rape girls above the age of 8? Here too, the ISIS Muslims were following the example of Prophet Muhammad to the T. So Prophet Muhammad waited until Aisha was over the age of 8. That is, she turned 9 when he raped her. Okay. Before that, he did all the other unspeakable things. In Islam, it's called 𝗤𝙗𝑖𝑛, where Prophet Muhammad will place his sex organ on the thighs of a 6-year-old child, Aisha, okay, and indulge in vicarious pleasure. And then when she turned 9, over the age of 8, that is, he raped her. And that's the same thing the ISIS terrorists were doing. So when Bangladeshi Islamists, jihadis, they target Hindu girls who are 8 or 9-year-old, 10-year-old girls we should know once again where that inspiration comes from. It comes directly from Sunnah. It directly comes from the conduct and teachings of Prophet Muhammad, the Quran, and the Hadiths. So this is where I think we should focus on. These are not individual criminals acting against Hindu women, children, raping them, killing them, and all of these things. These are Islamists who follow Islamic teachings to the T, and who are inspired by that, and who are motivated by that, and who have been made fanatical by those teachings, and they carry out all of these crimes. And that's why we don't have an option if we are going to fight back, and if we are going to safeguard ourselves, our families, and our children, especially in the third world countries. But I think increasingly it will happen in places like the US, as it is already happening in Europe, as Muslim immigration to these countries has increased and gone out of control over the last 14 or 15 years, especially since Obama took over in 2008. So for us, I think the most important step one is to understand that these are not isolated acts of crime committed by individuals who happen to be Muslims. No, these crimes follow the same pattern everywhere. It happens in Iraq, it happens in Syria, it happens in Gaza, it happens in Bangladesh, it happens in Pakistan. Everywhere it follows the same pattern, and the inspiration comes from the teachings of Islam. And that's the number one thing we Hindus should be aware of if you want to fight back.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Venkat ji. My friend is here. So now everything is happening. Thank you, Sachin. Now, one of the reasons why we are doing this, viewers, is that many of us parents who are based outside of India now seeing our children starting to date women or girls and boys from the Muslim faith. You need to understand what you are getting into. And I hope, sometimes they don't even tell you who they are dating, but you will get to know it at some point or the other. You need to at least tell them the facts about this religion. If somebody is a practicing Muslim, then you need to tell your child, look, there is something different about this religion. You need to know. I'm not giving this in any color. I'm just talking about educating it. So first, big request to all of you to like this video. I did not ask for a like at the beginning, because I understand many of you saying, why should I like without knowing what I'm getting into? Now you know what you are getting into. This is the critical phase of this topic, because we are going to suggest how to, take care of yourself, and in another way to try and cast doubt in the mind of these mindless believers. You can say, okay, they are mindless, and how are they going to understand? Yes, you have to keep at it. That's how you do it. So first question for you, 𝗠𝗏𝘖 is, Quran is not written by Prophet. He's not even said it. It happened, the first version happened 60 years after he died, and then it was rewritten almost completely after 200 years. So, I mean, even if this guy was whatever he was and whatever teachings there were, that's not what is in modern day Islam, isn't it?
So you're absolutely right? First of all, let's start with the composition of Quran. The Quran was composed no earlier than around 750 CE. That's about 120 years after the time of Prophet Muhammad. But however, the 60 years you mentioned is also correct, because the first traces of the Quranic verses are from the inscriptions in the Dome of the Rock, the mosque in Jerusalem, which were inscribed around 692, 693 by Abdul Malik, who was the caliph at the time, the caliph at the time. And Abdul Malik and subsequently his son. His son completes the project around 704, 705 CE. And there is an inscription where they talk about the Egyptian workers who were brought in and who were paid salary, and hence they were engaged in the construction of that mosque. He writes about that. We do not even know whether it was known as a mosque at the time. But the interesting point is, was Abdul Malik inscribing the verses of the Quran in the mosque, or were those inscriptions subsequently packaged in the Quran and sold as divine revelations? I think it's the later that happened, and I'll give you two reasons why. Number one reason is known as the Battle of the Camel. So this is from the early parts of the Sunni Shia schism that happens at the time, and Aisha, the favorite wife and child rape victim of Muhammad, she leads the Shia side in that battle. Okay, and this happens after the death of Prophet Muhammad. Now, this is strange because there are Quranic verses where Prophet, and there are also hadiths, and there are also other collections where Prophet Muhammad has very clearly said that he declares his wives as mothers of believers, and they have to be behind the veil. Okay, they have to stand behind the screen. Even when they are talking to uh, other Muslims, they have to stand behind the screen and talk to them, and they cannot come out. Okay, so Muslims are completely confined. The burqa system, the veil, everything was imposed upon his wives, including Aisha. Now, if that was the case, then Aisha could not have, if that injunction had existed during the Battle of the Camel, then Aisha could not have come out and fought and led her army against the Sunnis. And it could have only happened if these Quranic verses, these hadiths, were all composed long after the Battle of the Camel, and long after the death of Prophet Muhammad. So this is evidence number one. Evidence number two is something the great Islamic scholar Patricia Corona brought out first, and which has since then been developed by many scholars, including some of the archaeologists recently. And she was the first one to point out the direction of the Qibla is Amis. So what is the Qibla? It's spelled as Qibla, Qibla. Qibla is a wall. It's a prayer wall. If you go to any mosque, any Muslim mosque, what you'll find is a wall, and all the Muslims will bow down in the direction of the wall, facing that wall, and they will pray. And why is this wall important? It's because this Qibla wall faces Mecca. And there is a Quranic verse that says, henceforth, where Allah gives the command that henceforth everybody will turn towards Mecca in prayer. And this verse was revealed during the life of Prophet Muhammad. Whereas every single mosque that was built before 740, 750 CE, that is about 120, 130 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad, is facing in a different direction. Which direction? They are facing towards Petra in Jordan and not towards Mecca in Saudi Arabia. So it's unthinkable that Muslims would have gone against the commandment of Allah, and against the injunction of Prophet Muhammad that they should now onwards face Mecca while praying, and they would have still continued to build mosques until 750 CE, all of which the Qiblas are facing towards Petra. This is again proof that many of these verses, the Quranic verses, were all invented way beyond 750 CE, and then retroactively projected onto the life of a so-called Prophet Muhammad, and then sold to the rest of the people. Okay? And in terms of hadiths, it's even worse, because hadiths were, for example, if you look at Sahih Muslim and others, all of those are what they consider authentic. These were all written late 9th century to the early 10th century. Okay, that's 250, 260 years after the time of Prophet Muhammad. So back to your question, where I was reading with all of these things is, we do not know whether a historical Muhammad even existed. And Robert Spencer and many others have talked about that. And we don't know whether a historical Muhammad existed because there is zero contemporary evidence for that. And second, Christoph Luxemburg and others have pointed out that the word Muhammad or Mahmud actually referred to the anointed one. It's not even a proper first name. It refers to someone who is anointed, someone who's a prophet and all that. It's kind of more of a title. Okay, that's why you have coins printed during the reign of Abdul Malik, which have Jesus on one side with a cross, and then an inscription that reads Muhammad. Okay, MHMT, that's what they put because there were no vowels at that time, and they call it Muhammad. Okay, they call that person Muhammad. So, in other words, Jesus was called Muhammad, which could only mean it was a title. Okay, so we don't know anything about Muhammad, and all in the historical sense, and everything we know about Muhammad or the teachings of Islam comes from what is known as the standard Islamic narrative, which is all the stories they concocted, the fabricated Quran, the fabricated hadiths, and everything. And that's what has been sold to all of us. And but for Muslims who do not approach their religion critically at all, these are all divine revelations, and that's why they continue to follow. And hence, if we want to get that out, I'm skeptical that we can reason with Muslims because, in general, people who subscribe to theistic religions are not open to reason. And this gets worse in the case of Abrahamic religions because you're completely dogmatic and they don't allow you to think and they are not going to engage with the facts realistically. However, for the rest of us, we should be aware of that because Muslim conduct, the famous Nobel Prize winning physicist Steven Weinberg once said, good people do good things, bad people do evil things. But for someone good to do something evil, that takes religion. So Steven Weinberg's comment applies 100% to Islam. So by default, when a child is born, whether it's a Muslim child or a Christian or a Hindu, whoever it is, that child is not evil. Okay, that child is innocent, right? He or she is ready to be imprinted with opinions, thoughts, and others. Okay, and Islam imprints in their mind hatred towards Jews, hatred towards Hindus, and hatred towards Yazidis and other defenseless people. And hence, it's even more imperative for us Hindus to know the truth about Islam so that we can not only educate our children, okay, and that's something we have always done. And you mentioned the point about some of the Hindu boys and girls marrying Muslims. And I don't care if they are ex-Muslims, but I have and my wife have, we have all always made it a point to educate our daughters from childhood uh, about no to Muslims. Okay. So we don't have to feel shy about that because we will teach the same thing to children. If we had lived 70, 80 years ago, we would have said, do not marry a Nazi. Okay. And the Nazism is not even 100 as dangerous as Islam. Why? Because Nazism was a human creation. It was created by Hitler and his thugs, and we can get rid of that. Whereas Islam is packaged and sold as divine revelation, and that makes it very, very difficult to eradicate that. So that's why I will say it's 100 times more dangerous, 1,000 times more dangerous than the Nazi ideology. And that's why we Hindus should be not only aware of that, we should talk about that without fear. We should educate our children because Hinduism and Islam are incompatible, and Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist on the same in on the same soil because not because we hate them. Okay, we Hindus have always welcomed everyone. So we welcomed the Jews 2000 years ago when they came as refugees to India. We welcomed the Christians who came probably around the 9th, 10th century to Kerala. Then we welcome Parsis, we welcome the Tibetan Buddhists. We have welcomed everybody. Okay, so we are not shunning anyone. And if at all, most Hindus are guilty of being ignorant and completely naive about the teachings of Islam, and hence they uh, uh, trust that Islam is going to be similar to Hinduism. However, that's not the case, and Hinduism and Islam cannot, Hindus and Muslims cannot coexist because Muslims do not want to coexist with us. Okay, for them it's 𝗤𝙗◍ and for them it is Darul Islam, and hence our territory, our women, our property, assets, everything is something which the Muslims can take over. They can take our women, they can massacre our men, and these are all teachings from the Quran. Quran explicitly says, Islamic jurisprudence explicitly says, when a Muslim kills a Kafir man, that marriage is null and void, and his wife can now become the sex slave of Muslims. Go ahead.
I just want to show a small video that is doing the rounds on social media now. Just take a quick look at this.
Absolutely true, truthful. Every verse you quoted is the truth. It's there in the Quran. and this is what Islam teaches. And Muhammad did every one of these things, killing the men, enslaving the women, chopping off the head, beheading them, and torturing them to death, skinning them alive. And there was one poetess, an Arabic poetess, who made fun of Muhammad. And obviously, it's very easy to make fun of Muhammad because he was a fraud, and he was a terrorist. He was the original Middle Eastern terrorist, by the way. And then he did all those terrible things, and she made fun of him. Okay, that's absolutely legitimate. What did Muhammad do? He tied her to two camels. Okay, her legs and arms are tied to two camels and split in opposite direction, and she was split in two and massacred. So all of these teachings come from the Quran, from the Hadiths, and the behavior of Prophet Muhammad.
Thank you so much, Venkat. 1 second, let me, my Bluetooth. See, somewhere my software has been hacked, I think, and I can't even, I have a list of 4 suspects, so 4 countries as suspects. So I don't know where to begin. Who's doing it? So they keep me on my toes. So sorry about that. Now, question is, one is education, but education is to people who can understand it. You go to a jhopatpatti, you go to a really distressed area. I'll give you the reality today, Venkat. 24 Parganas, and the area, actually what is today Bangladesh, it's very, very water fed, in the sense that there is water everywhere, because it's the delta of 2 great rivers, Ganga and Brahmaputra, right?
Yeah.
So what
and
is
Airavati also, right? Airavati flows in as well.
Oh, okay. So some part of it flows in also.
Right.
So
right.
so the problem here is that in 1971, then the real genocide happened. It is a genocide. It will get listed in America, and then the world will accept it. Because today, unless America says it, unless a white man says it, the world is not willing to accept something. Whatever it is. See, the thing is, in the 71, when that genocide started, the poorest of the poor Hindus of Bangladesh, they also escaped from Bangladesh, and they settled along the border, what is called modern day 24 Parganas. What has happened is they are not as resourceful as perhaps the Muslims who came there. Now the Muslims stay away from the waterlogged areas, and these are the ones who are left at the real banks of the rivers, which ebb and flow, hurricane prone, every natural calamity prone. These are all Hindus, and primarily when they can't get anything to eat, their women go and sell themselves.
Yeah.
To the well-off Muslim in the nearby village, and that's how they get food, they get money.
Correct.
So this is one side. The other side is there's a feeling that we own you. We will do whatever we want with you. So this is why you keep hearing these stories about what is going on. So I am trying to address that abject, poor 11, 12, 13-year-old girl. Especially pedophilia is so prevalent. It is heartbreaking how they put these kids through mental torture also. So something we have to find a way that can be effective as a deterrent. Clearly, these buggers are all vote banks of the ruling government. If Mamta goes, some other Shamta will come, some other Gumta will come, some other, the word starts with the letter B will come, and same thing will happen. I have no doubt about it. I'm not going to mince any words. This is the truth. People have been saying it for 50 years. So how do we help that little girl, a Dalit girl, 11, 12 years of age, just trying to save herself?
So even if she's not a Dalit girl, let's say she's a Kayastha girl, or she's a Hindu girl, or whoever it is, right? Or even a Christian girl or anything, or a Buddhist girl, my sympathies are 100% with her. Okay, and I think just look at it. Today morning, I think you had a podcast on this yesterday, right, with another guest.
Yes.
So this is about Trump not only congratulating Hindus on Diwali, but openly talking about the genocide and persecution of the Bangladeshi Hindus, and very unequivocally declaring that he stands by them, and then he will come to their rescue. Now, look at it, Sree Iyer. You mentioned 1971, but you and I have spoken about this earlier, that even before Mujibur Rahman, this is 1946, right? That guy was the right-hand man of Suravardi. Okay, and then Mujibur Rahman was a criminal, okay, a terrorist, a rapist, a butcher, who actually led a lot of the gang violence on direct action day in 1946. Okay, so and
Naukali.
this is the fellow, yeah, and the Naukali riots and other things, and then this scumbag was the one who would take over. You know, when the Mukti Bahini won in 1971, who will come to power, and then this uh, legacy of Mujibur Rahman was never made public. Okay, very few people know about that, and I think outside of PGurus, very few would have even seen the picture of Mujibur Rahman standing right behind Suravati and leading all the direct action day and now Kali riots and other things. Okay, so this is number one. Okay, so before Trump came out and spoke, very few leaders, and this includes Indian religious and political leaders as well. Nobody even bothered to speak up. And I think this is the curse our Hindu community faces. Our women have been slaughtered, raped, butchered, sold into slavery, have been forced to sell off their children. Our men have been, beheaded, 𝗤𝙤 𝙤𝙤, and all these things. And yet we don't even talk about it. Okay, this kind of inertia, this kind of complete lack of empathy really puzzles me among the Hindus. And I'm glad that Trump spoke. And like you correctly said, when the white man says something, the rest of the world listens. And I hope now that Trump has spoken, and if I hope he comes to power and takes action, and then the rest of the world, the media, and particularly Hindus will start realizing what their community has been put through for centuries. And in the case of Bangladesh, since 1971, but when you take the example of East Bengal from 1946 onwards, okay, Hindus have been persecuted by Muslims because of the Islamic ideology, because of the Islamic hate mongering against non-Muslims, and we have paid a huge price, and it's not even being talked about. I think if you want to do something about anything, we should first acknowledge that a problem is out there, and then we should discuss all of its dimensions. So then that's why I'm really happy that you are taking all the effort and all displaying all the courage to discuss this, because if we don't, then just like we lost Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and many other places, we will also lose the rest of India to Islam. So the first step is talking about that, and the second step is recognizing that the most abominable conduct of ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Islamic terrorists of Bangladesh, Pakistan, and other places is directly rooted in and motivated by the Islamic teachings in the context of Muhammad. That's where I think we should begin.
Venkatji, one thing that continues to baffle me even today, because any state government is fully within its rights to do this. Take an inventory of all the mosques, find out how many of them are carrying stones, incendiary material, knives, swords, anything that you can use to attack people. Shut them down today.
Yeah.
Why are you not doing it?
Simple reason. The simple reason is this, I think, was published in India Today some 6 or 7 years ago. Okay. I think if I remember correctly, it was sometime around 2018 or so. At that time, Trinamool Congress leader proudly told the interviewer, okay, the India Today interviewer, that we have enough Muslims in 80 to 90 assembly constituencies of West Bengal, where we can now be defeated. So 80 to 90 is roughly what? 35%, 40% of the constituencies in West Bengal. And if 35-40% of the constituencies are assured, okay, you will win no matter what because of the Muslim vote bank. All the Muslims will turn up en masse and vote for TMC. Then TMC will only support them and appease them. This is the fact everywhere, right? So take earlier Rahul Gandhi and now Priyanka Gandhi, rather Priyanka Vadra. And then, so she is fighting from Kerala, right? And what is the reason? Because she's fighting from a place which is predominantly Muslim and knows that 100% of them will not only show up, but will only vote for her as a vote bank. And hence, this is what motivates the politicians to go and appease the Muslims. And the same thing is happening in the West, because they know if they bring in tens of thousands of Muslims from the Middle East, from Pakistan and other places, they are always going to vote for the left. And not only that, they will play a stellar role in rioting and destabilizing society. And all of that is needed for putting up muscle power on the street. That's why they are being brought in, and that's why they are being opposed. But from our perspective, we cannot take it lying down, right? Uh, uh, so there was a Nassim Taleb, okay, Nicholas Nassim Taleb once made a really good observation. Okay, so uh, the intransigent and intolerant minority inevitably wins. Unless otherwise, the silent majority wakes up and says, this far and no further. And this he says in his book, Skin in the Game. Okay, that's a book every Hindu should read and understand why this is a very important observation, because the moment we Hindus stand up and we say we will not tolerate these kind of attack on Hindus, okay, we will not accommodate the ideology of Islam in any shape or form, okay, then that's when changes will start to happen, because there is a reason, right? So, for example, starting with George W. Bush, America went on attacking one Muslim country after another with or without reason. Okay, in some cases it was justified, like the attacks on Al Qaeda, and in some cases it was completely unjustified, like the attack on Iraq. But still, they went ahead, and then Muslims rarely displayed the courage to take on America in the Western world. Okay, you never saw any protests in Times Square where they were burning the flags of they're burning the American flag or Constitution or anything. They always behave because they understand the language of force and they respect it. So the moment they know that Hindus will not take it lying down and they will retaliate. When I say retaliate, I'm not advocating violence. I want to be absolutely clear of that. Okay, so by retaliation, what I mean, we will use the tools of free speech and law. Because at the end of the day, what is the number one thing that Muslims fear? They fear any ridicule and mockery of the Quran, Prophet Muhammad, and Islam. Why do they fear that? Because the moment we start mocking, like the example you showed, the slides you showed, all of those are written in black and white in the Quran, in the Hadiths, and everything. So we don't have to manufacture anything. We don't have to exaggerate anything. The moment it is done, increasingly, the Muslim kids who are growing up in the Western world, but more and more, even in places like Pakistan, where Zakir Naik and Yasir Qadhi once said that about 20-25% of the Muslims are already atheists, okay, in those countries. So many of them, when they read these things, they abandon Islam, they apostatize, okay, and that's why those people are the Islamists, the jihadis are shit scared of anyone who's mocking Muhammad or Islam or the Quran, and that's their biggest weakness, and that's what they fear the most, and that's the weapon we should always deploy. We should mock, ridicule Islam, and call for the eradication of the ideology of Islam. Let me make this very clear. To give an analogy, after the Second World War, the West, the Allies, they went and they eradicated the ideology of Nazism. They eradicated the ideology of fascism in Italy, but they did not exterminate Germans or Italians. Okay, and that's the same prescription I make. Eradicating the ideology. Sorry, eradicating the ideology is not the same as exterminating the people who happen to be victims of that ideology or followers of that ideology. As far as the Muslims are concerned, if you went back 1300 years, 1400 years, they were Hindus. In some places they were Jews, they were Christians and everything, and they were following various polytheistic religions. And we should make all the efforts to bring them back and out of the clutches of Islam. Otherwise, at the end of the day, it's a demographic warfare. And then it's also about, Nassim Taleb says, the intransigent, the intolerant minority always wins because they will not make compromise. Whereas the generous, broad-minded people will make compromise. And then the intransigent, intolerant minority, which in this case are the Muslims, will also show the willingness to go out on the streets and riot because they don't make the same investments in life that you and I make, right? We educate our daughters. Okay, we send our daughters to the top technical schools, top business schools, and they thrive in the corporate world. That's not what they are aiming for. They are aiming to put the woman behind the burqa, behind the hijab, okay, under the hijab, and then turn her into a womb factory so that she is not only segregated, she is not only isolated, and all she has to do is to aid the Islamic total fertility rate warfare against the Kafirs. And hence, rescuing those women from the clutches of Islam is super important. Frankly, for that reason, even rescuing their men is equally important because a few centuries ago, their ancestors and our ancestors were the same people. So they are our own blood siblings, but who have been corrupted by the ideology of Islam. And that's the point I always raise and repeat, and reinforce because we Hindus should not only understand what Islam is, B, we should not only not tolerate any attack on Hindus, but even more importantly, our focus should be to eliminate the ideology of Islam and bring the Muslims back to the folds of Dharma. If we don't venture to do that, then it's always going to be a game of losing proposition because you can defend, you can fight as much as you want, but the enemy can just pelt stones and walk away. He is not going to pay a big price. Whereas the one who's defending is always going to pay the biggest price. That's why let's put them on the defense, use mockery and ridicule as our weapon. Let's draw cartoons, let's do other things, but get the message across so that Muslims begin to understand what Islam is. Even more importantly, when they say Islam is a religion of peace, we Hindus can respond back instantly. That's what we should do.
Thank you so much. And now let's take a quick look at some questions for you, 𝗏𝗚𝗍. We are 46 minutes into our discussion. Time just flew. 5 or 6 questions. So we'll not take any more new questions, but let us try to address as many as possible. Let's go with the questions, please. Manoj Soma wants to know, how about Trump standing for Hindus in America and Bangladesh if he wins? Does he stand strong or is it just for election gimmick to take on Hindu votes? Your views?
No, not all. He has always stood by the Hindus. I'll give a few examples.
Yes.
In 2016, when he ran for election, not only Donald Trump, but his daughter Ivanka Trump, she also visited the Hindu temple. Okay, and then I think she visited the temple in either Maryland or Virginia, I forgot, somewhere in the East Coast, visited, and Trump has time and again, okay, very openly said he has not only admired the Hindu immigrants to this country, and he has put Hindu politicians like Vivek Ramaswamy right in the middle of the canvas, but he has very openly and repeatedly said that Narendra Modi is his friend, India is an ally of America and one of the most important allies. This is something he has always said. And just look at his recent, McDonald's appearance when Trump showed up at McDonald's in Pennsylvania and he served food for all the patrons who are coming in. And one car that drives by has an Indian couple or an Indian family. Okay, so they are surprised to see Trump serving them a burger or anything, and then they are very enthusiastic about Trump, and Trump is very enthusiastic about them. And most important point he makes is that Indian gentleman says, we are all ordinary people and thank you for doing this for us. And he says, no, you are not an ordinary person. Okay. And this is the point he has time and again made because he makes the distinction between legal and illegal immigrants into this country. Indians are legal immigrants. We Hindus are legal immigrants. And then we bring tremendous value to this country or to whichever society we become part of. Okay. Look at the number of entrepreneurs, number of techies just right here in the Silicon Valley. Walk into any quants group in an investment bank. Look at the number of Hindus who are working there as techies. And then you get the message. So Trump understands that. He appreciates that. No, it's not a gimmick. It's not an election gimmick. He is genuinely pro-Hindu.
Next one, please. Meghna Agarwal wants to know, God forbid, if Israel is totally isolated, won't the Islamic nations gang up all the more against Jews, Christians and Hindus? Shouldn't India openly support Israel now?
I think India is as openly as possible supporting Israel. Okay. And then the reason I say that in a little guarded manner is India faces extreme terrorism from the Islamic jihadis from multiple directions. And the Western countries are not friends of India, right? Like someone like Trudeau is openly, viciously anti-Hindu, anti-India. But even others, right? How many of these Western countries have ever spoken up and stood by India? Then look at the northern border. You have China, who's inimical to India. And Russia has been very friendly towards India, but then Russia is a weakened nation today. And then look at the eastern side. You have Bangladesh, and then you have all these Rohingyas and others who can come in and destabilize the country from within. And I think those are the constraints which prevent India from openly supporting Israel. However, look at the action, right? And this is something the Israeli Jews and then the Jews from the diaspora, they understand very well. All of them very explicitly say that, yes, Hindus are supporting us because they have gone through the same suffering that we are going through, and they understand this issue very well. And then the Jews understand it fully well. I know this well because I have lived and worked in Israel. Okay, so I know this very well. Okay, I did that in the late 90s. And now, uh, so in this case, India is not only doing that, India has gone a step ahead, and it did supply a lot of ammunition to Israel, right? In some of the cases, when they retrieved the shells, it had the Made in India stamp on it. Okay, so India is secretly and silently supporting them, and the Islamists are pissed off over that. That's why they are abusing Hindus and Jews in the same breath. And India is doing it, and it's in the right direction. But the most important question that Meghna Agarwal is asking is, what happens if Israel is totally isolated? Okay, that will be curtains down for civilization. Because if you look at the entire Middle East, the only civilized country is Israel. That's the only place where a young girl can aspire to become a biotechnologist or a software engineer or a special forces soldier. The rest of the countries are all Islamic hellholes. And if Israel were to come down, uh, or because America will abandon it, and the Democrats might do that, and if that happens, then not only will Israel go down, but then it will be curtain stone for civilization, because from that point onwards, the Muslim uh, illegal immigration to the West will become unchecked. And then the West, if it becomes like, already we know that Muslims enjoy disproportionate power in many European countries. And one example is London, where the mayor himself is a Pakistani Muslim. And in those cases, eventually what will happen is, with the fall of Israel, there will be a concurrent rise of Islam and Islamists, and then they will increasingly get into power in the Western world, and that will be curtains down for India as well. And more, they will now start funding the sleeper cells and others. And that's why it's imperative that not only Israel wins this war, it also significantly weakens all the other Islamic countries, take out the nukes of Iran and other things, do everything that needed. I would even go so far as to advocate that there should be benevolent colonization of many Muslim countries in the region, especially Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and all of Iran and all of those places, Yemen and all that. There should be benevolent colonization by Israel and the Western world. And similarly, there should be benevolent colonization of Afghanistan and Pakistan and Bangladesh, not because we want to subjugate those people. Those people are already colonized and subjugated by Islam and by Islamic jihad. And what we are advocating is, give them an antidote, give them a panacea, which is to have a benevolent colonization by which their women will be educated. And you would have seen the news recently that the Prince of Saudi Arabia, MBS, has now recruited 9,000 music teachers to teach the children. Music in Islam is haram, and he's doing everything absolutely harami about that. Okay, because he wants to get rid of that. And I think those are the initiatives that have to happen with the benevolent colonization, so that we get rid of the scourge of Islam from this planet.
Thank you so much. Next question, please. Raj wants to know, Hindu heritage as nastik concept. Islam or Christianity directly evolved as religion or nastik alternative? Why religions are not parallel but crisscross?
So we should understand the word nastika, right? I think which is often misunderstood by Hindus. Okay, Hindus conflate nastika and nirishwara. These are two different words. Okay, two different Sanskrit words. So, for example, starting with the Upanishads, we have this concept of neti neti. But Hinduism is not nihilistic. It doesn't say, once you say neti neti, you are not this body, you are not this hair, you are not this t-shirt, whatever it is, then who are you? Then it gets into the question of Atman, which is unchanging, eternal, and all of these things. Whereas Buddhism, Jainism, and other religions, some of the others like Ajivikism and other things, they did not have the concept of the Jiva, Atman, and other things. Buddhism to some extent has, some schools of Buddhism has, but Ajivikism and others did not. And then Buddhism, for example, advocated the concept of impermanence. Okay, that's what leads to shunyatva. Okay, so that impermanence is called nastika. Okay, it's the opposite of asti. Okay, which is permanence, and hence it's nastika. Okay, whereas Nirishwara darshana is schools like many schools, like for example, Lokayata or the Charvaka school, okay, or even schools like Sankhya and others, because they are Nirishwara, because, for example, the Mahabharata calls Sankhya as Nirishwara Darshana, okay. It's a school of vision or a thought, which is Nirishwara. Nirishwara literally means you don't need an axiomatic acceptance of God. Okay, you don't need God as an axiomatic principle to establish the nature of reality. That's what Nirishwara means. Okay, so that's why we should not confuse Nastika with uh, Islam or Christianity or any of those things. So those are not Nastika alternatives, because Nastika can still be absolutely dharmic, because Buddhism is a very much dharmic religion, and that's why we use the word Dhammapada, which is in Dhamma is Dharma in Pali, and hence they are a dharmic religion, and they are not opposed to Dharma or Hinduism. Okay, so they are not an alternative. And the reason the religions are crisscross, on one hand you have the dharmic religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc. Then on the other hand you have Abrahamic religions, especially Christianity and Islam. Why are they at loggerheads? Because of one simple reason: monotheism. Okay, Islam and Christianity are monotheistic. What is monotheism? Look at the Shahada, Ya ilahi illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. What does it mean? There is no God except Allah. That means it's an open rejection and denial of the divinities of all the other religions. And Muhammad is his final prophet. That means everyone who came after Muhammad, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, hundreds of other great sages, Ramana Maharishi and others, they are all rejected as fake by Islam. Okay, so monotheism is founded on the principle of nihilism of the divinities and the divine principles of other religions and destroying them. Okay, that's why Hinduism or dharmic religions on one hand and Abrahamic ideologies like Christianity, Islam on the other are at loggerheads and cannot coexist.
Thank you so much. Next question, please. Thank you, Geeta ji, for your super sticker. Rasheshwar Nath Rana wants to know, Sree, I think most of the Middle East is fed up of terrorism. Surrogately, they are supporting Israel. What about Jordan, Saudi allowing their airspace instead of Iran, in spite of Iran warning them against?
This is absolutely correct, right? There is a lot, like I mentioned the example of a conversation with Zakir Naik and Yasir Qadhi, where they talk about 20-25% of Muslims in many of these countries have become apostates. They have become atheists, or at least they have given up Islam. Okay, and a few months ago, you saw a video of Pakistani mullahs crying over the fact that something like 400,000 or 4 lakh Pakistanis have made tattoos of Quranic verses, Aisha, Prophet Muhammad and others, not just on any other body part, even on the genitals. Okay, and some of the Pakistani mullahs are crying about that. This is how Islam is being attacked, and why are we living to see this day and all these things. And yes, this is absolutely true. There is a significant section of people who are fed up not only with terrorism, but also with Islam. Take the example of Iran. There is a survey called GAMAN, GAMAAN. It's a Dutch survey organization that has been studying Iran for several years now, if not decades. And they point out that roughly about 8% of Iranians support their regime, the Ayatollah regime. The other 92% do not. And we saw repeatedly that the women refused to wear the hijab, and many of them were beaten, thrown into the jail, and one girl tragically got killed also. But still they refused to wear the hijab. And everywhere the Iranian mullahs, they were painting Israeli and American flag on the streets and asking the Iranians to walk on those, but they won't trample those flags under their feet. They stepped aside, they went around those things. Okay, so this is what is happening. And I think and there are a lot of Iranians who are also urging Prime Minister Netanyahu to attack and kill the Ayatollah, and then the military leaders, and then take down the military installations and other things, because the Iranian people are sick and tired of that. So I think if Israel plays the game carefully, they target their nuclear facility at Natanz and other places. They kill their Iraqi Republican Guard top honchos by selectively targeting them, get rid of the Iranian regime, eliminate all of them one by one. Most of them are hiding now. Okay, kill them. If it happens, I think not only Iran will be liberated and become a flourishing civilization once again, but they will also have democracy and modernity and everything they are so desperately craving for. I think with Saudi Arabia, we don't have to do anything because already Mohammed bin Salman is doing that. He has already started teaching Ramayana, Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita, yoga, music, and everything there. There are rave parties in Saudi Arabia. I think uh, it is the West which played a stellar role in imposing all the dictators on the Middle East. But now with the rise of Iranian people, MPS and others, I am a lot more hopeful of that part of the world. But I am less hopeful of countries like Pakistan, India and Bangladesh, because here not only are the Muslims in large number, but then they are also being appeased by the politicians on the left of the spectrum, and that's a bigger danger. Whereas that danger doesn't exist in Iran or Saudi Arabia or other countries.
Thank you so much, Venkat. So viewers, I think it is IRGC stands for Islamic Republican Guard Corps or something like that. I think you said Iraqi Revolutionary Guard. I think
My apologies. My apologies.
Yeah,
My
I think it's
apologies.
Islamic.
I mean Iranian Republican Guards. Sorry, not Iraqi.
Yeah.
I think we are talking about Iraq in some other context. I think I might have.
Yeah. No worries. We just want to clarify it so that we don't get any confusion here. So this is where things stand, guys. And viewers will be back with 𝗑𝘗𝘖 2 weeks from now. We're trying to make this a regular affair. So every alternate week, Venkatji will be on Wednesdays in Tamil and on Fridays in English. I'm sorry, not Hindi, English. And we are going to be taking up some hard topics. We are not shying away from this. Because see, somebody has to start the ball rolling. You understand that? I mean, I keep getting asked in streets these days when I go with vibhuti, what is that thing you are wearing on your forehead? And I explain to them, this is sacred ash and it keeps me grounded. That, that's where I go once I'm done. So, I mean, I'm trying to make it simple for people to understand, not go to the length of, Shiva, Shaivism and all that stuff. It's easy to understand and say, okay, this is where we are at the end. That's where we'll go. So stay grounded. So thank you so much.
It is also our obligation to do this, right? Because just think of, I think every Hindu should read, there's a great book called 𝗤𝗏𝗎𝗓. Okay, so it was a poetry written by one of the greatest Sanskrit poetesses. Yeah. So it was written by Ganga Devi, Kumarakampana's wife. Okay. So she was not only a very intellectual woman, she was trained as a swordswoman. Okay, so she could actually fight. Okay, she's reported to have been extremely charming and wrote this great piece. And there she talks about, so that's the time when Kumarakampana. So to give a little bit of background to our friends, so this happens like 650 years ago when the Muslims have invaded South India and the temples in Tiruvannamala, Srirangam, everything have been desecrated, ransacked, everything. And when Kumarakampana goes there, he's the general, prince, warrior who leads the Hindu fight against the Muslims. He goes there, he finds these places desolate, and Ganga Devi writes in 𝗤𝗏𝗎𝗓 that in Srirangam, this great temple, which used to be great once upon a time, now trees and shrubs are growing out of the Gopuram, okay, because the temple had been abandoned after desecration, and then jackals and other wildlife are roaming the courtyards of the massive and beautiful temple. And then she expresses so much sorrow. Then she and her husband, they lead the fight. They rescue Hinduism. Okay, so this is the kind of sacrifice our ancestors have made. And in the past, I might have talked about sacrifices made by the Jats, with the Rajputs and others. But this time I wanted to kind of shift focus and bring up the example of Kumarakampana and Ganga Devi. And that's the kind of sacrifice they made. And we have no right to abandon all of those things and just, make it an easy walk through, walkway for, the leftists, the Islamists and others. And we have a sacred duty to fight back.
Thank you so much. And viewers, I'm going to be releasing one conversation I had with Rajesh Govindarajulu, Pages of History. You remember that series? I've turned it off for a couple of months because the current events have been so, fast that I couldn't take time to go back to the history. But we do have an episode where he captures all this stuff, Kumarakampanas and 𝗤𝗏𝗎𝗓 and all that stuff. Just wait for that episode. It's going to come very soon. Thanks once again, Venkat. And viewers, namaskar. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to click on the bell button for notification. Thanks once again, Venkat.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a nice day.